Hello everybody, today I'm doing a video comparing Scottsdale, Arizona to Sedona, Arizona, and the reason I'm doing this is because I get people that sometimes call me from out of state and they say, hey, I'm thinking of moving to Arizona, but I'm not sure if I want to move to Scottsdale or if I want to move to Sedona. So if you've ever had that question in mind, what's the differences between Scottsdale and Sedona and which would I like better if I'm decided to move here, stay tuned because I'm going to talk about the differences between the two Arizona cities, Scottsdale and Sedona. The channel is Living in Northern Arizona, where I'll teach you everything you might want to know about living in the northern half of the state of Arizona. My name is Dawn Dickinson. I do sell real estate here in the northern part of the state, so if you ever have a question about real estate in Sedona, Flagstaff, Verde Valley, Prescott area, you can do what many other people have done and go to the description below and get my contact information and give me a call, text, email, or even go to my website, schedule a Zoom call or a phone call, and we can have a short chat about real estate in northern Arizona. Okay, so let's talk about Scottsdale and Sedona, Arizona. There are probably three very important issues that will make you decide which one of these Arizona towns you'd want to live in if you are not familiar with it. One is, of course, if you have school-aged children, if you have any kids that are in elementary, middle school, or high school, Scottsdale is probably going to be your place of choice because they have very excelling school systems. They have a lot of schools. They have a lot of choices. They have public schools, they have private schools, they have good education, they've got A+ ratings on a lot of the schools, and so if you've got kids in school, that may be a better choice for you. Now that doesn't mean that Sedona doesn't have good schools. Sedona probably has B+ rated schools, and they're small schools, so if you want your child to grow up in a small town feel, Sedona could be a better choice, but again, Scottsdale has the big number of schools, the excelling schools, and a lot of the programs that go along with the big schools, you know, sports programs, band, chorus, theater, robotics club. There's private schools, public schools, like I say. So if you have school-aged children, you're probably going to lean towards Scottsdale over Sedona just because that's what goes along with a city with a much larger population. The second thing is jobs. Scottsdale has a lot of the high-tech jobs. Now, if you have a job where you can telecommute and live everywhere, you might lean towards Sedona just because it's a beautiful place to live. But if you have to go into the office at least once a week, Scottsdale is where there are a lot of good high-paying jobs, and that might be making the choice for you, making you choose Scottsdale over Sedona. And finally, the big thing that a lot of people ask about is health care. You know, there is a hospital in Cottonwood and there are doctors' offices, but Scottsdale does have a huge number of hospitals. There's the Mayo Clinic, there are all the Cancer Center of Americas, and numerous healthcare facilities in Scottsdale. So if you're frail medically or you want to be close to very good level 1 trauma center hospitals, Scottsdale might be the place for you. But let's dive in a little bit deeper in case those are not your top issues on deciding where to live, and let me tell you a little bit more about the two cities. Okay, first let's get into the basics. So Sedona is a very small town. We have a population of just over 10,000 residents. If you include the village of Oak Creek, might be pushing 15,000, 16,000 total in all of Sedona, the village, and the outlying areas. But Scottsdale has a very large population of 240,000, almost 240,000 people. So just consider that Scottsdale is huge. Not only is Scottsdale itself a huge populated area, but it's in part of metropolitan Phoenix, which, you know, you've got Phoenix, Chandler, Gilbert, Mesa, Tempe. All of those towns have very large populations. And then Sedona is close to Verde Valley, but all of Verde Valley combined probably has about 65,000 residents. So Scottsdale, just a very huge populated area. And if you like a small town, then Sedona is going to be a better choice for you. Now, the other thing is, you know, the climate and the location. Scottsdale being in the lower elevation at about maybe 1,200 feet above sea level, whereas Sedona is about 4,500 above sea level, so you're going to have a lot cooler temperatures. So in Scottsdale, for instance, the summers can get very hot. You can have many days over 110 degrees, and in Sedona, the record high temperature is 110 degrees. Scottsdale record high temperature about 122. Difference in temperature is usually between 10 and 15 degrees. In the summertime, the average temperatures in Sedona are going to be in the low 90s, whereas in Scottsdale it'll be more like 104, 105. That doesn't mean that that average temperature is going to be what you have all summer. I lived in metropolitan Phoenix for years, and it was not uncommon for you to have 3 solid months of temperatures over 110 degrees. Now, another thing is Scottsdale has beautiful golf courses, and so does Sedona. But the difference is in Sedona you can actually play golf in the summertime, and in Scottsdale you really can't unless you're up at like 4 a.m. unless you're just like the camel personality where, 115 degrees, sun blaring at you is not going to faze you. But for most people, it's actually a little bit dangerous to play golf in a Scottsdale golf course. And in Sedona, it does get warm in the summer, but less likely that you're going to pass out of heat stroke on the golf course. And if you go early, the temperature can still be very nice. Now, there's a slightly younger population in Scottsdale. You've got an average age of about 47, and in Sedona, it's about 59. And of course, in Sedona, you're going to have a lot more retired people living in Sedona than you do in Scottsdale. Scottsdale, a lot of people have families and jobs, and so the big age difference, if you are still young, raising your kids, you might want to locate to Scottsdale and eventually retire in Sedona. That's an option too, but you have a younger population in Scottsdale. You have a more working population. Now, the other thing I see in Sedona is you do have an older population, but you have a population of very fit older people. I'm occasionally going into the grocery store and I see somebody behind that looks just like a fit 45-year-old, and they turn around and they got a face of a 75-year-old because people are active, they do a lot of outdoor activities, they spend time in nature, and they eat a lot of very good healthy organic foods. That's very big in Sedona. So even though we have an older population in Sedona, the population that lives there do seem to be pretty fit compared to other places that I've lived. Now, Scottsdale is going to be much drier. You might have 11 inches of rain during the year. I saw that when I looked it up. I thought that seemed high. I remember Phoenix having 7 inches of rain, but the source that I saw today said 11 inches of rain, and Sedona gets much more rain than that. You get about 23 inches of rain and 11 inches of snow. Of course, no snow in Scottsdale except an occasional dusting that will melt right away, but we do have snow in Sedona. In fact, this year we have had quite a bit of snow, and it is beautiful on the Red Rocks. So Scottsdale and Sedona both have beautiful terrain, but it's a different type of a terrain. So Scottsdale is that lower desert where you'll have the ocotillos and you will have the saguaro cacti, which are absolutely beautiful. And if you have a house that's nestled a little bit on the hill, the view at dusk and in the evening of the city lights can be just breathtaking, and also looking at Camelback Mountain within the city, a very nice view. But then Sedona is something that's so unique, you can almost never find that anyplace else in the world. A couple exceptions might be Bryce Canyon in Utah. Maybe some areas in Lake Powell resemble Sedona a little bit, but really the Red Rocks are so unique and beautiful, and along with the Red Rocks and the beautiful terrain, you just have a lot of outdoor activities as well. You have the beautiful hiking trails, you have mountain bikes, the ATV riding, all sorts of outdoor activity to do, and also you've got all the spiritual stuff, the vortexes, all the spiritual shops, the classes that you can take, all sorts of, it's kind of like a spiritual hub of the world, actually. Sedona is one of the most spiritual places in the entire world, and if that's your draw, the crystals and all that stuff, you might want to be close to Sedona, because that's a big difference between Scottsdale and Sedona. Okay, I'm going to tell you a couple of other differences between Scottsdale and Sedona that I found at niche.com. So this basically is not my opinion, this is something that I found statistically, where the schools in Scottsdale are rated A, some A+, and Sedona, you've got schools that are rated about a B sometimes a B minus. So the schools in Scottsdale, like we just talked about, are a little bit better if you have kids in school. That's something to think about. Crime though, crime rating at niche.com in Scottsdale is showing at a C+, which is really not that good. In Sedona, there's actually not enough data to be reported. I'm not seeing crime data, but I do feel myself pretty safe, and I do not see a lot of crime reported. I don't see any super violent crime, murders, assaults, that kind of stuff, but you do have some property crime, and it's not like no violent crime exists in Sedona, but it's so low that it's very difficult to get crime statistics. So Scottsdale going to be a little bit less safe. And the other thing though is the cost of living is very similar. The cost of living index in Scottsdale is 142, and it's actually the same in Sedona, 142. And when I say cost of living index, there's a company that puts together stats of cost of living across the United States, and 100 is the national average. So both Scottsdale and Sedona are pricier places to live, with them being about 42% higher living costs than the rest of the United States. Let me tell you a little bit about housing. The latest month to report data is February 2023, so it's very early in the year now. It's spring, and right now there are about 1,840 homes for sale in the city of Scottsdale and only 188 homes for sale in Sedona. But the average sales price is actually the same. $1.1 million homes average in Sedona and in Scottsdale. Now it's going to be off a little bit, like 1.12 million versus 1.14 million, but $1.1 million average sales price for a home in Scottsdale and Sedona. So you see that's why it's so much more expensive. But in Scottsdale you have many more to choose from. You have about 1,800 to choose from, almost 10 times more, because Sedona only 188 homes for sale right now. It's expensive. You have more choices of homes to buy in Scottsdale, but you're going to pay about the same. And then the nightlife. Now in Scottsdale you have tons of nightlife activities. Niche.com rates it at about an A. Sedona doesn't even have a rating. There's not a lot to do at night. I mean, there's some stuff, restaurants, but Scottsdale, you've got clubs, you've got theater, you've got parties, you've got all sorts of stuff going on, and not really that much at night going on in Sedona. So if you're the type of person that likes to go out clubbing at night, you're going to pick Scottsdale over Sedona any day. Okay, so next I'm just going to go over some of the things that you might want to know about Scottsdale and Sedona. I'm just going to list them out for each town. I'm going to start with Scottsdale. Again, we talked about the views. There are some beautiful, breathtaking views in Scottsdale. A lot of them are going to be city lights. You're going to have some mountain ranges. You'll see Camelback Mountain from some of the homes in Scottsdale. You might see the McDowell Mountain Range. Very beautiful. There's going to be a lot of nightlife. There's going to be a lot of traffic, though. And that's because the city is just so crowded in Scottsdale. You got a lot of activities. You've got the Phoenix Open. You have all sorts of sports activities, clubs, events to go to. There are lots of high-tech jobs, good high-paying jobs in Scottsdale. And if you don't work in Scottsdale, you can certainly travel to one of the neighboring towns like Chandler, where you have a lot of high-tech jobs as well. There are many choices for healthcare. If you have an illness and you don't like your doctor, you can go to another doctor. There's the Mayo Clinic, there's many hospitals, there's many doctors' offices, there's the Cancer Treatment Centers of America close by. So many healthcare choices, and if you're concerned about healthcare, definitely Scottsdale has a lot more opportunities. In fact, a lot of us in Sedona will travel to Phoenix or Scottsdale if we have a serious health condition, just because there's so many more choices there. You have excelling schools, you have more shopping, you have a higher quantity of shops to go to, museums. You have a lot of that in Sedona too, but more choices in Scottsdale just because of the sheer number of people and businesses that exist. Again, high cost of living, that's going to be the situation in both of the towns. You have a lot of outdoor activities. You might have different ones in Scottsdale. You're going to have the golf, which you have in both towns. You're going to have places like Rawhide to go to. You've got the lakes to go to, like Canyon Lake, Saguaro Lake. You've got horseback riding. You've got some of the stuff like Westworld way in North Scottsdale, you got that Jackson Barrett Car Festival. I know I slaughtered that name. I'm obviously not a car person, but lots of activities and big names come to Scottsdale. Touring every year are these events that you see. So lots of that kind of stuff to do, outdoor activities. You've got a lot of resorts. Of course, Sedona has resorts too, but you got a lot of resorts in Scottsdale. You have high housing costs, which is the same as Sedona, but those are just some things to think about. Now, the big thing I see between Scottsdale and Sedona is just a completely different vibe. And maybe it's because of the age of the people, but I would say in Scottsdale, and I've never lived in Scottsdale, but I have relatives that live in Scottsdale, many friends that live in Scottsdale, and I lived nearby. I lived in Gilbert and Chandler, Ahwatukee, so I made many trips to Scottsdale and hung out in Scottsdale quite a bit. In fact, I worked in Scottsdale for about 15 years while I was living in the Phoenix area. So there's a different vibe. It seems like the people that live in Scottsdale are might be more competitive, they might be a little bit more flashy or showy, maybe even more likely to have plastic surgery type of things, different vibe of people that live in Scottsdale versus the vibe of people that live in Sedona. So let me give you a little more overview of Sedona now. So in Sedona, like Scottsdale, you're going to have a lot of beautiful scenery and views, but they're going to be totally different and very unique. Unique views of the Red Rocks, but also you will have views of Oak Creek Canyon, say, where you've got the beautiful creek flowing through and it's carving out a canyon. You're about 45 minutes from Flagstaff, so if you want to see beautiful tall ponderosa pines, you can get to Flagstaff. There's going to be a lot of hiking in Sedona, beautiful hiking trails of the Red Rocks, near the Red Rocks, views of the Red Rocks, and again you have the beautiful vortex. You have 5 to 7 major vortexes. People come from all over the world to see and experience the vortexes, vortices, however you want to say it. It is a spiritual hub in Sedona. It's one of the biggest spiritual draws in the world. It is a big tourist town. Now, you do get a lot of tourists or winter visitors in Scottsdale, but in Sedona, if you want to consider that there's 10 to 15,000 residents and you get 2 to 4 million visitors a year, you got to realize that the huge population of tourism, it just puts out also another different vibe. You've got an older population, you have a lot of retired people, you have a lot of very fit retired people. People seem to have a strong sense of community among the residents in Scottsdale. You can play golf all year long in Sedona, except when the golf course is covered with snow. You can play golf. There is traffic. Now, the traffic is different though. The problem is you got the 179 is like 1 to 2 lanes all the way through town, and so even though there's a lot of traffic, a lot of it's seasonal. When you have a lot of the tourists, it's seasonal, and it's also not people going back and forth to work, so you can't really predict it so much. You can predict it by the time of year, but not as much as the time of day. And then in the summertime, it's not as bad, but the traffic in Sedona is going to be a lot different than the traffic you're going to encounter in Scottsdale, say trying to get from Scottsdale to Chandler or something during rush hour. That will have you pulling your hair out. But I'm not saying that I don't want you to think there's no traffic in Sedona, because there is quite a bit of traffic, and it is very annoying to try to get across town in a trip that should take you 20 minutes in high tourism season could take you an hour and 15 minutes. So just be aware, you've got a lot of tourists, and that makes a lot of tourist traffic in Sedona. I say there are fewer shops and fewer galleries, but there are more unique shops, unique galleries. There's a lot of art centers, art galleries, artists. There's the Artist Fair that's in the good weather in Sedona, so there's a lot of things to look for if you're really into the artistic stuff. There's some classes too, and then of course the spiritual hub. There's lots of spiritual classes, spiritual shops. You can get readings, you can see a medium, you can see a palm reader, you can see a tea reader, you can see all sorts of that spiritual stuff if you're into that. So a lot more of those choices. Now, the vibe in Sedona though is totally different. People don't seem to be as competitive. Now, could that be because people are older? Are you less competitive as you age? I couldn't tell you if that's the case. A lot of people in Sedona let their hair go gray, for instance. So I'm thinking people are not as concerned about appearances, and not everybody. Obviously, I have plenty of gray hair under under Miss Claro, but it does not seem to be as appearance driven and as competitive. Like, you know, I have a better car than you. That, of course, is going to be dependent on your neighborhood and where you live in either one of those towns. So you can't say that it's across the board. It's just kind of a vibe that I've observed. So that's going to be my opinion, not an official story, just the different vibe that you can see. But I'm sure everybody that we meet is going to say there's a different vibe in Scottsdale than there is in Sedona. So I hope that helps you. Actually, both cities, I don't see how you can go wrong if you could afford to live in either place. I would recommend if you're younger and you've got kids in school that you might want to go to Scottsdale. And if you're older, pushing retirement age, definitely my choice would be Sedona. That is my own opinion. I hope some of the information I gave you in this video will make that decision for you a little more unique. And again, if you have any questions about real estate in Scottsdale or Sedona, I don't really work the Scottsdale market, but I have a lot of colleagues that do that. I could refer you out to somebody who will take really good care of you if you're interested in buying a home in Scottsdale. And of course, I live in Sedona, so I know the market very well if you're interested in buying a house in Sedona or selling, not just Sedona, but Sedona, Verde Valley, which would be, you know, Cottonwood, Clarkdale, all of those Verde Valley towns, even Prescott or Flagstaff. I would love to talk to you. So my contact information always in the description below. Give me a call, text, email. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you do, or if you did, please give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing because I post videos like this every single week, and I would love it if you'd come back and see me next week.